Hi, I'm Chayale.
Hi, I'm Hinty. Welcome to Your Relationshift. Join in our conversation where we explore
The nuance and beauty of Torah's perspective on relationships.
Hey, Thyla.
Hey,
It's been a while.
it's been a while. Yeah.
Thank you, Hashem, for a beautiful Pesach. We're all redeemed
Mm,
and ready to move forward.
yeah. I definitely feel like redemption can hit hard for some. So if you feel redeemed, but also like you needed a longer coaching session after Pesach, you're not alone.
Right. I love
There's a
that.
lot to process, which is actually why we're here. That's what we wanted to do today.
Nice.
Um, Pesach is like high energy. There's a lot going on. And now we're in the weeks of Sefiras HaOmer, where we're really looking to work on ourselves in a very integrated way. Really take it like it's each day. We go day by day, step by step, like a very broken down process of self-development, self-refinement. We want to get to a space where we're really open for a deep connection with Hashem, which will be Matan Torah, Shavuos at the end of this process. So it's definitely an amazing time for us to be, doing this, having this conversation. Really anything that we would discuss is relevant because I think that's the work that we do here is really making ourselves a vessel for connection with others, with Hashem.
Yeah, Chayla, so agree with you. First of all, like Pesach is definitely a time that puts our everything to the limit and really invites us to either explore or just block out and survive. And I know being a person who was in survival mode for a really long time would definitely rather not be in that space and would rather be as intentional and as invested in what's happening right now as possible. So that was definitely something that was in the back of my mind over Pesach. Like, how could we be more intentional instead of survive Pesach? And then afterwards, like you're saying, Sphere is definitely a time to be very introspective and look at ourselves and see what needs to improve and what needs to be worked on. But here's the thing, like, it's hard to be introspective if you're in survival mode. So I think that's what you were saying. Like, let's first talk about what we can do to shift away from that survival mode experience. Literally like the fight, flight, freeze, fawning experience. I know I'm not necessarily talking about everybody has trauma and everyone is in trauma mode, but I do find myself often feeling dysregulated. So maybe we should just speak about it in terms of dysregulation. And if I am dysregulated, then that means that I'm not in the parasympathetic state of being. And if I want to be in that state where I could actually have my Chachma Bina Das, my prefrontal cortex with me, on board with me, and working through my life with me and helping me be intentional, I have to first just feel like I can breathe and I am calm and I'm relaxed and I'm not defensive and I'm not feeling like I have to run to survive or turn to whatever it is that numbs things out in order to survive my next experience or bedtime or an interaction with my husband. So I think let's use this episode to kind of like dedicate this episode to just like the slowing down that has to happen before we even start talking about how to be intentional during Sphera.
Yeah. I think that um, just maybe you mentioned this, but to bring this word, when we want to start a process of growing, we need self-awareness. And I think that there are levels of self-awareness. And we want to be, however much self-awareness we have, we want to increase that. And to understand or know what it is that we're feeling and experiencing in a moment, that gives us the information to work with. then what's going to be my next step, or what process, or where do I need to turn to next? So just like getting in touch with myself. How do I get in touch with myself? Know what's going on for me, and that tells me where will tell me what my next step needs to be.
Yeah. Yeah, you can't work on anything if you're not even understanding where you're at and what you're up to. And like I always say, there's also a level of honesty that comes along with that. Because I know for myself, like it's easy for me to avoid being truthful to myself about myself. Um, so that awareness and honesty is so, so important. And all of this falls under the category of ownership, right? The second principle. But it's such a huge principle because it encapsulates so much. So I'm happy that we're breaking it down.
Yeah. Let's do this. Let's do some ownership.
Yeah. So for the woman out there who, I feel like you always do this, Chayale, for the woman out there who feels like she understands relationship and she gets the principles, but like push comes to shove. When the moment is required, it's super hard for her to actualize or really behave in the way that she wants to show up or the way that she dreams for herself to be. A lot of times I'll be coaching a woman and she knows exactly what her vision is for herself, but she just can't get there. And one of the reasons why is because behaviorally, she's not aligned with her vision because she's just not regulated. Her body is not on board with her vision. So there's like a separation between here and down here. And I think it's an important to bring in alignment, like what you were saying. So one thing that I learned over Pesach, which I thought was great, I think a lot of people probably talk about this, but I never heard it in this acronym, was the acronym of STOP, S-T-O-P. I learned it from Susie Kanan, who I met on Pesach, just a really, she's a therapist who lives in Israel, but just a really beautiful person. And she taught me this. So what is STOP? STOP is the first letter stands for actually stop, which is probably the hardest and quickest part of this whole process. So sometimes you just have to, it's like just like a hard stop. Whatever it is that's happening right now, you know, you're about to scream at your child. You know that you're about to get defensive with your husband. You know that you're going to go on the offensive with your husband. Whatever it is that is happening, you feel the dysregulation come up. So there's already a few things that you've done. There's the awareness that this is something that maybe happens. There's the noticing how I'm feeling, what activation feels like for me. And then there's getting to the level of actually knowing that I have to stop. So stopping is huge. And if you're just at that point and you've been able to do that and nothing more, that's already a big step because it takes a lot of awareness, honesty, and noticing to be able to do that. So stop. That's a full stop. So what does that look like? It means going to the next room. It means stopping whatever you're about to do, taking some time for yourself. And the next step is actually take a breath. So, and again, like a breather could be going into the next. So stopping is stopping. And then take a breath is going to the next room, doing some deep breathing, taking just some space for yourself, whatever that looks like for that breather to happen. The next step is O. So it's S-T-O. O is observe. And this is probably the longest part of this little acronym, which is just to observe what's happening inside of yourself. So what part of you is activated? What part of you is speaking and saying that it needs to relax, it needs to be taken care of? A lot of women experience a lot of tightness in their chest, their throat. There's a lot like in the pelvic area that the body's holding on to. So it's not always like I'm not leading everybody through a somatic exercise. I'm not a somatic therapist, but it is nice to just like do a quick body scan in the observe part of the acronym and just like see what's okay and what's not okay. And if it's not okay, like let's say there's a tightness in your chest, to just like notice it and observe it and let it have just a moment to relax. Literally just let it have its own breather. It's kind of like a deepening of the awareness, noticing piece where you're just like, okay, where is this intensity happening? Where am I experiencing it? Oh, it's in my shoulders. Okay. Just going to observe that, give it some time. And then the last letter is P, which is proceed, which I love proceed because what it does is instead of you being activated and literally your fear or your anger, whatever the activation is, having you by the neck and dragging you along, now you've taken more control over yourself. You've become your own person. And then there's the activation that is apart from you. It's something you're observing, something you're now looking at, you're witnessing. And then you now have the opportunity to be intentional about how you want to proceed. And it could be that you're going to continue just doing the same. You're making lunches. Now you're going to continue making lunches, but now you're a different person. Or the proceed could be, wow, I really need to go eat something. Or the proceed could be, I'm going to take some time for myself, take a half hour, go on a jog, and then come back to this reality, whatever it is that I was in. But what you're doing is you're taking back your power. You're being intentional. And there's something really grounding about being able to do something like that.
That's so cool. It's such a good one.
Loved it.
Yeah, to just stop. And I want to add that you can also have messed up already, because sometimes, part of this is like putting your brain in slow motion to see like when you went from 0 to 1,000, like what, like slow that whole thing down and see what happened. But sometimes you blew up already. You yelled at your kids, you stormed off. So you're in that very activated state, and you already behaved impulsively because you were activated. And I think you could still, sometimes we feel like it's too late. Like I already messed up. I blew over my top. But I think stop would be appropriate there as well. Like still stop and see, what just happened? How did I end up here? Next time I'll have maybe catch it quicker. If I get used to this practice of just asking myself, what's going on? What do I feel? I think that's a new question for a lot of people. Like just to check in with themselves, at various points throughout the day, especially women who are working, parenting, getting through the grind. We're very much in a go motion. What's the next thing on my list? What has to get done? It kind of feels like totally like, I don't know if the word is not okay, but it's like totally off to just be like, what are you feeling? Like, what do you mean, what am I feeling? I'm feeling like I need to make dinner and I need to buy groceries and I need to get my kids' homework done and we need to get everyone to bed and we need to make sure that, but what's the difference what I'm feeling or not feeling? Like, that's just not on the agenda for today. So yeah, I think, you don't want to go through your whole day being like, well, now I feel this and now I feel that, because then, your life will fall apart. But there has to be a certain, like, just, sometimes, like you said, well, I'll have clients also similar experience where they can't see how they can act on the principles in the moment. And I'll tell a client, the bathroom is your best friend. Just go to the bathroom. Like, take yourself out of the situation, because you have to sometimes, to get yourself to stop, you have to like physically remove your own body. It's like a child. I think it's like how we might treat a child that was dysregulated. Like, we would pull them to the side and we would, say like, what's going on? What happened? Why are you so upset? It's almost like taking yourself to the side and being like, what's going on? What happened? Why are you so upset? Who hurt you? Who took your toy? What came up for you that made you? And then it's like, we're going to go back in there, and you're going to continue. Either this is going to get put on, a shelf for you to pick up with a friend or a coach when you have the time. Like, you not necessarily have the time in the bathroom to unpack everything that came up for you, that had you triggered, that has you dysregulated. Like, you might just, which is why I think proceed is very appropriate. Like, take the next step, having given yourself the permission to, even just say to yourself, okay, I'm going to deal with this. Like, something came up for me. I clearly need to give myself some me time. I need to, I have an issue that I need to speak through with somebody. Just knowing that you're going to address it and deal with it and give it the time it needs allows you to calm down and continue doing whatever it is that you need to do, knowing that you'll come back to it.
I like that. Yeah, I like that. You know what you reminded me of? What's it called? The Maslow theory? Was it?
Like
Is
the
it?
hierarchy of needs.
Yeah. So like, I do this with my kids, where like I just do a mental checklist if I'm seeing that they're dysregulated, where it's just like, okay, are they tired? Are they sick? Are they hungry? Do they get enough attention today? Like, just like checking things off to see what's going on. And a little bit, I'm hearing like you have to do that too for yourself. Just
Yeah.
what's going on? There's something
Right.
deeper that's making you behave in a certain way.
Right.
What's going on?
Or not even deep, meaning it might just, sometimes I have this with my kids where I'm like, oh my God, what's going on? And I've jumped to like worst case scenario, like even in the hierarchy, I'm at the bottom one, like they don't have enough love and they're not spiritually, whatever. But I'm learning as a parent to just start with like food, like just have we eaten? And a child will say, I'm not hungry. It's not that. And like, I'm sure most, if you're a parent on here, if you've had this experience, you know that you have to say to the child, whether or not you think you're hungry, you're going to eat, and then we're going to talk about whatever's bothering you. So I also think maybe with ourselves, we have that experience where we're like, it can't just be that I'm hungry. That feels childish, or that feels like what I blew up at my children, or I blew up my husband because I'm hungry. I'm much more sophisticated than that, right?
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't get so triggered or so upset just because I was hungry. What they did was really, really wrong, let's say. So I guess, yeah, being open to when you're stopping and checking in with yourself, you have to really be open to it being that you're just hungry, like that, or whatever it is. But I think there has to be an openness in not also deciding for yourself that it has to be, especially sophisticated, what's bothering you.
Right. You taught me that acronym. HALT. We're doing
Yeah,
acronyms
that's a
today.
good one.
HALT. Right? What is that?
Hungry, angry, lonely, tired.
Mm.
It's a little of a mix there. Like hungry,
Right.
tired on the two ends are pretty, like pretty simple. Angry and lonely is probably a little bit more, a little bit more deeper. But
Right.
yeah,
Especially because like under anger is usually pain. So there's like something else there. And with loneliness, I mean, that's just like an existential experience, of every single person.
right. But there's also
We're the lonely men of faith. So,
there's
but
also
still a good thing to recognize.
well, we have it. I don't know if we mentioned it in the first time we spoke about ownership here, but there's a basic need for connection, and sometimes we're getting really frustrated with our spouse. A big part of a woman's frustration with her husband could just be a basic loneliness. She needs adult company.
Mm.
She needs to be spending time with other adults, and she doesn't have that opportunity. And then there's so much pressure, so much riding on the time that she has with her husband. I was just speaking to someone recently, a client. She wants to do this trip, but her husband doesn't like it. And I was like, well, why don't you go with friends? And she said, well, but isn't my husband supposed to be my best friend? Like,
Mm.
I should want to go with him. I'm like, but he doesn't like the same things as you do. So why torture each other when you could just have a good time with friends? And it's so simple, but it's also not so simple if you are concerned that doing a trip with your friends means something terrible about your relationship, because
Mm.
you can't go with your husband because he doesn't like I don't know, he doesn't like swimming and you want to do a swimming trip. So yeah, it's like ownership is so simple, but there's also like sometimes it just pretty much solves all the problems. And then you're good to go.
Okay, so we did stop, we have halt, and we also have a relationship acronym, actually.
Right.
Um, yes, it's called PASTA.
Pasta.
Yeah.
Who doesn't love a
And
good bowl of pasta?
well, yeah, that's the best way to solve any problem. Just get some mac and cheese. You're good to go.
I was thinking, like fettuccine alfredo, but
Oh,
we can
yeah.
mac and cheese.
Linguine. It's just
I mean, like, it's gonna be a
choose.
bowl of pasta, you want it to be epic.
Yeah. So imagine this warm, steaming bowl of pasta. Okay, so what is pasta? P is stands for pause. So as you can tell with all of these things, halt, stop, pause, it's all about not getting not just flowing with the dysregulation. So there has to be some sort of like stop, and then we're going to get into something else. We want to get into a different flow, different
Different
ebb.
rhythm.
Yeah. So P is for pause. Again, same thing as stop. It's just you have to have this recognition that something is wrong at this point. And again, it's probably one of the hardest ones, but it happens immediately, at least once you recognize it. And A is acknowledge, because it's really important to acknowledge what is happening here
Mm,
and to talk to yourself, right? Like almost like witness yourself and know that this is okay, right? So I feel like I should give an example. Quick example. So my son wanted to get to school on time. This is my 7-year-old. And not only did we not get to school on time, we got to school late. And I
mm,
drop him off, and I'm just feeling so guilty and feeling so bad. And I could have carried that feeling into the rest of my day, and it would have impacted maybe in a subliminal way or a very subconscious way or a small way,
mm,
everything. It would have touched everything because just the slump in my shoulders would affect everything else. So having this ability to just like pause, okay, pause. You don't want to just lead your whole entire day with a feeling of guilt and shame and sadness.
mm,
So pause, like acknowledge what's happening. I'm feeling this way. I'm feeling guilty about the fact that I wasn't able to provide an early school coming for my child. um, and just allow it to sit. Doesn't have to be that I'm a bad person, right? The judgments are really where our dysregulation escalates, where we start beating ourselves up, where we start feeling like we're drowning in shame. The drowning piece is where we don't want to be. We don't want
mm.
to be in quicksand. We don't want to be drowning. We want to be on the shore, watching the waves flow in and out. So the pause, and I'm acknowledging, I'm seeing the ebb of my emotions, right? So the ebb over here is I'm feeling guilty. I'm feeling sad. This is painful. And then there's S, which is soothe.
I wanted to, before you moved on to S, I wanted to say, like, I actually thought acknowledge, the A was for ask, um, which I think it could be either acknowledge or
Right.
ask. Sometimes the process of asking yourself some questions um, helps get to a little bit more of an understanding of what's happening. Am I afraid of something? Even let's say when you drop your kid off late, like, am I afraid that he's going to have a bad day now because he started late? And he's going to be sad and miserable the whole day. And that's, adding to my feeling of guilt. And just one more piece also about the pause, because um, we know that our emotions, we talk about our emotions as children. That's the Alter Rebbe mentions that in the Tanya. So when you're talking about, like, if you didn't pause, then it would just follow you through the rest of the day. So I'm picturing this child that wants to ask you a question. Like, you're in the middle of cooking for Shabbos and your kid comes to you and says, Mommy, can I don't know, why do birds fly? And you're just like, I can't do this now, right? Like, I'm too busy. And then they just keep coming back and keep coming back and keep coming back and keep coming back. And if you would stop, like, turn around, look them in the eye and say, like, I really want to help you understand why birds fly, and I'm cooking for Shabbos, so I can't, and also don't know, or whatever, but let's look into it later. So then they know that they were seen and they were heard, and they can come back a little later, or, it's going to be visited. So doing the same thing for ourselves of, like, if I'm not gonna stop and pay attention to it, it's gonna be like that nagging child that I never responded to. So yeah, you were up to S.
I love that. I love that you're saying that, because no, so then continue. From there, continue into S.
Okay, fine. S is soothe. So that could be like a short treatment plan in the moment, with, like we said before, when we were doing stop. Soothe could be breathing. You could take a breath, like just breathe in and out for a second. Soothe could be, texting a friend, like, I feel so bad, I dropped my kid off late, and they really wanted to go on time, and your good friend could be like, yeah, I know, it's so hard when you want to show up for your kids and you can't. Soothe could be like, wow, my feeling of guilt is alarmingly intense. I should probably speak to somebody about this. I think it's need based, like based on how intensely you're feeling. Like, what do I need? Maybe again, go back to the halt. Like, do I need to eat? Am I tired? Right? Am I feeling more overwhelmed? Is my reaction, in my ask phase, is my reaction measuring what happened? Does it feel like a disproportionate reaction to what happened? Maybe that's because a lot of my needs are not being met, so I'm just feeling a general sense of overwhelm. So what do I have now that I can give myself to?
I think like a word to throw in there is like a gentleness. Like what you were saying, just like a real gentle, non-judgmental, maybe even compassionate experience.
Yeah, it's okay. You're okay. You make mistakes. You're human. You're trying. You're a good person. Like, soothing beliefs, soothing words. I'm trying.
Yeah. And like in that example, also, something that was soothing for me was realizing, like, I really care, I really care about my kid. That's where this is coming from. Like, it's very easy for an experience like this, for me to conclude, oh, I'm a terrible mother and I always do this, and now my child's going to have a bad day. Right. And instead for it to the wording to be, I really care about my child, really love, I'm really trying. And then comes the next step, which would be to turn it around. To try to see if there's a way that I could see this in a way that Hashem sees this, not just with compassion, but how Hashem sees a larger picture. And this sometimes could be a harder part. I would suggest doing it with someone or with a coach, because sometimes it's hard to get out of your mental framework that you were in to see something different. Let's say for me, something that was interesting that I learned was realizing that, even as you were saying it, it came up for me where you were saying the fear of now I'm going to affect the rest of his day and the rest of his day is going to be bad, and how I'm like drowning in that. Whereas that's really not something that I could blame myself for. Like there's also him and him making his own choices, and I can't carry everybody and all of their choices and their day at school and everything else. You know what I'm saying? Like it is a little bit much that I'm taking on for myself. So turning it around, at least for me in that situation, was realizing this is not within, like, I can't carry that. That's not for me to carry. And I want to choose intentionally what I do want to carry. So the turnaround was realizing it's too much guilt. Just be accountable for what I did wrong and try to be better tomorrow and let it go. And that was a way for me to like turn around this whole dysregulating experience to be an experience of ownership, actually.
Yeah, I like that. It's like we had with stop, where you proceed. Um, Part of like what it means to move on from something is like take what you need from it and let the rest go. It's like you needed, if the message was for you that you need to plan your morning better, so take that and leave the rest, right? It's like you're going to sit with, maybe he had a bad day, you're not in control, there's so many other factors. He gets to make his own choices, he gets to learn how to come late and still manage with, you know, his experience. There's teachers, there's friends. So the, you know, the turning, like turning over the page, right? Like, okay, being able to move, to keep things in motion and being able to move forward. um some affirmations I think are helpful, right? Like, you know, I'm not in control, Hashem's in control. Even just like, I really care about my child, and that's why it doesn't feel good to do this. I'm a good person, I'm a good mother. I want what's best for my children.
I'm showing up to what is within my power to impact.
Mm,
That was helpful for me. Like I am showing up. I'm showing up within what's within my power,
right.
you know? If that's a real turnaround. Because in the beginning, before the P, I was feeling like, "Oh, I'm not showing up, I'm not falling apart, as opposed to, but I am. Like I am showing up to what I can. And there's what to be accountable for, and I can do better and will.
Yeah, perfection is for God and no one else.
Right. Yeah. So here's the thing about pasta. I think an important thing to say. Sometimes it's really hard to turn it around. And sometimes you can't turn it around right away and you have to just go right back to P. So it's like just PAS, PAS, PAS until you could get to the TA, because sometimes it just takes time to get to that turnaround. But if you're already doing that pause, the PAS part, pause, you're already tremendously more ahead than you were before. And I think that's something to celebrate.
Yeah. Just, I think maybe we can close with this. The general theme of ownership, the whole foundation of ownership is um, living with intention. Um, Being in a space where I'm choosing my behavior, I'm choosing my responses, I'm choosing my thoughts. Um, Things are not happening to me, and I am not happening to me.
Mm.
I have the wheel, I'm driving. Um, and I'm choosing where we're going, meaning within what we have control over. I'm choosing where I'm going in terms of how I think about things and how I process them and the decisions that I can make. So, you know, when we find ourselves in this self-driving car, right? Like I'm being driven. Um, so first stop, right? I'm supposed to drive. So like, let's like put the brakes on so that we could get the right person into the driver's seat. And then, all the steps that we spoke about, and then I can proceed. Now I'm back to being driving. So it's like if I find myself out of that seat, somehow I don't have my hands on the wheel anymore. It's about first stopping so that I can get back into that position and continue driving.
I love that analogy. That's great.
Okay.
Even in Tesla, the self-driving mode, you still have to have a finger on the wheel and you still have to have your eyes looking through the through the windshield.
What about the Waymo?
Oh, yeah, that's something different. We do not want to be a Waymo in our lives. That's my conclusion. That's my takeaway.
Or have a 2-year-old at the wheel, right? Like
Right.
that very dysregulated, emotional, frustrated, chaotic energy holding the wheel. That's when it's like, okay, that the adult, there's a reason why you can only get your license at a certain age. Adults need to drive and children need to sit buckled in the back seat. And that's the relationship that we need to have with our feelings.
So, wishing everybody a super regulated day. What were you saying, Chayale? To invite all of our listeners, if they have any of their own acronyms, quick ways to help them reset, remember where they are, what they're doing, help them come back to themselves and the vision for themselves that they have, send them in. We'd love to hear them.
Great. Or in general, feedback, questions, let us know.
We'd love to hear from you.
Thanks for being here.
Bye.
We would love to hear your feedback, thoughts, and questions.
Please leave a comment below or email us at yourrelationship@gmail.com.
Looking forward to connecting with you.
See you next time.